not only safeguarding China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, but also safeguarding international law and basic norms governing international relations, especially non-interference in others' internal affairs. Over 100 countries have stood up, reaffirming their commitment to the One China policy and understand and support China's legitimate position. Many foreign ministers say they stick to the One China policy, understands China's necessary measures to defend our sovereignty and territorial integrity. ASEAN foreign ministers also released a statement said that they abide by China policy.
One of its worst fires in a fuel deposit, so the Cuban government
古巴媒体提问：古巴目前正在扑灭一个燃料库最严重的火灾。古巴政府请求国际援助，许多国家都做出了响应。中方对此有何评论？中方是否有提供援助的计划？
中国和
China and Cuba are good friends, good comrades, and good partners. China expresses our deep mourning for the casualties and express our sympathies to the family and the injured. The Red Cross Society of China has decided to provide emergency humanitarian assistance to the Cuban counterpart, and China is ready to continue to provide assistance to the Cuban side. Next question, please.
China Review News. Japan's Prime Minister said Japan strongly condemned China's firing of missiles after the missiles fall into its EEZ and said it impacts the peace and stability of the region and the safety of its people. What's your comment? China is firmly against Japan's erroneous remarks and groundless accusations. China is in no position and has no right to make such remarks on the Taiwan question, no matter in legal, political, or ethical terms. In response to Japan's remarks, State Councilor Wang Yi already refuted that during the East Asia Cooperation Foreign Ministers meeting. Japan once illegally occupied and invaded Taiwan and kept the island under its colonial rule for 5 decades. It has killed more than 600,000 of our Taiwan compatriots, plundered local resources, and forcibly recruited laborers from East Asia countries, and they have been tortured to death. The Cairo Declaration in 1943 stipulates that all the territories Japan has stolen from the Chinese, including Taiwan and the Penghu Islands, shall be restored to China. And Article 8 of the Potsdam Proclamation stipulates that terms of the Cairo Declaration shall be carried out, and Japan accepted the Potsdam Proclamation and announced unconditional surrender. The China-Japan joint statement signed when China and Japan normalized their diplomatic relations also stipulates that Japan respects China's stand on this regard. Japan should not forget the history and needs to reflect upon what it has done from time to time. Have Japan forgot the commitments it made when signing the joint statement with China? Does it mean to subvert the political foundation of China-Japan relations? Japan has been keeping a high profile on the Taiwan question. Does it harbor an ambition regarding the Taiwan region? Could it possibly be that Japan want to take this as an excuse to expand military build-up, forsake its pacifist constitution and following the path of peaceful development? Japan should offer international community a responsible explanation. You mentioned Japan said China's military drills have infringed upon its so-called EEZ. China and Japan have not carried out maritime delimitation in relevant waters, so there is no such a thing as Japan's EEZ, and Taiwan is part of China's territory. We have conducted normal military drills in the waters of our own territory. They are open, transparent, professional, and it's within the domestic law and international practices and law. And it is a warning to provocateur and a step to uphold regional stability and cross-strait peace. We urge Japan to reflect upon its history of aggression and understand the highly sensitive nature of the Taiwan question, abiding by the spirit of the 4 political documents and the commitments it is made, stop following the U.S. in its negative words and deeds and the wrong strategy of containing China with the Taiwan question, and to avoid causing serious harm to bilateral relations. Next question, please.
Question from Bloomberg. Regarding the
彭博社提问：您刚才提到了相关军事演习活动和透明度的问题，我想请问一下，在台岛周围的这个演习现在是否已经如期停止了，还是说还在继续这些军演？
中国军方已经
The Chinese military has already released a readout. I would refer you to that. Next question, please.
法新社提问，还是想请问一下这个军演的问题。目前来看，中国的军方还是继续在台岛周围进行联合演习，这么做的原因是什么呢？这也是对佩洛西访台的一个反制措施吗？为什么中国觉得上周的军演还是不足够，还要继续呢？
Could you repeat your question, please?
法新社提问：中国军方今天宣。
多次就
Previously, we have elaborated China's position on multiple occasions. I would like to take this opportunity to make our position clear again. In this regard of China's grave opposition and representations, Pelosi has visited Taiwan. This violates China's sovereignty and territorial integrity and gravely interferes in China's internal affairs, reneges on the U.S. commitment, and undermines cross-strait stability and peace. China has every reason to make strong response. Our position is legitimate, reasonable, and proportionate, and our measures are strong, proportionate, and firm. Our military exercises are open, transparent, and professional. It is consistent with domestic law, international law, and international customary practice. It is aimed to warn the perpetrators and punish the Taiwan independence forces. We will firmly uphold China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, firmly deter the U.S. scheme of containing China with the Taiwan question, and crush the DPP authorities' fantasy about seeking independence with Taiwan, with the U.S. support. Next question, please.
The drills are mentioned.
我想请问一下，就是之前中方宣布的是这个演习会持续到8月7号的下午结束，但是目前还没有结束。那么这个是符合国际通行惯例的做法吗？中方是不是会宣布新的这个军演？因为可能会影响到过航的船只，还有这个飞机等等。请记者再重复一遍问题。Could you repeat the question, please?据我们所知，中方上周发布的军演通告，通知的是军演将会持续到8月7号的下午，也就截止到期了。那么，中方继续进行军演，似乎是不符合对于国际军演的国际惯例的。那么，我想请问，中方是否会对这个新进行的军演发布通知和宣告呢？是否会向民用的这个船只还有飞机等发布新的预警？
台湾是中国的领。
Taiwan is part of China. Conducting normal military exercises is open, transparent, and professional of our own waters. Relevant competent authorities have already released statement. This is consistent with our domestic law, international law, and international customary practice. This is legitimate to uphold our territorial integrity and sovereignty. Next question, please. Phoenix TV, we noticed that on the 5th, U.S. Secretary of State Blinken, Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong, Japanese Foreign Minister Hiroshima also released a joint statement after their trilateral strategic dialogue, reiterating that there's no change in the respective one-China policies where applicable in the basic positions on Taiwan of Australia, Japan, or the United States. That insertion of when applicable was also found in the joint statement of G7 foreign ministers and EU High Representative. What is China's comment on that? The One China principle is a universal consensus of the international community and a basic norm in international relations. It is an integral part of the post-war international order and recognized by the UNGA Resolution 2758. It is also the political foundation for China to establish and develop diplomatic relations with relevant countries. Taiwan, as a province of China, has no independent status. Relevant countries has put in place preconditions or proposal for the One China principle. This is illegal and void, and China firmly rejects this. The content and the definition of the One China principle is clear. That is, there's only one China in the world, and Taiwan is part of China. The government of the People's Republic of China is the sole legal government representing the entire China. The One China principle is universal, unconditional, and undoubtful. All countries with diplomatic ties with China and all member states of the UN should unconditionally comply with the One China principle and the UNGA Resolution 2758. Relevant practice of certain countries is a mischaracterization and distortion of the One China principle. It is in essence challenging the authority and legal efficacy of the One China principle and challenging the post-war international order. A person without credibility could hardly establish himself in society, and a country without credibility could hardly establish itself in the international international community. We suggest relevant countries read history, abide by the solemn commitments in black and white, have a clear understanding of the solemn commitments and the danger and the harm of emboldening Taiwan independence forces. Challenging the One China principle means challenging international rule of law and international order. It will be opposed by the international community and will lead nowhere. Next question, please.
This is a question on the visit of a Chinese ship to Sri Lanka. Reports have said that China's ambassador in Sri Lanka met with President Wickremesinghe on Saturday, and this followed a request from Sri Lanka that China delay the visit of the ship that was scheduled to call in Hambantota port from August 11 to 17th. Can you confirm that Sri Lanka made this request to delay the visit, and do you also have a response? Thank you.
I have noted relevant reports. I would like to reiterate 2 points. First, Sri Lanka is a transport hub in the Indian Ocean. Many scientific exploration ships, including those from China, have stopped at the port of Sri Lanka for resupplies. China has always exercised the freedom of navigation in the high seas and fully respects the jurisdiction of coastal states of the scientific exploration activities within their jurisdiction waters. Second, Sri Lanka is a sovereign state. It can develop relations with other countries in light of its own development interests. The cooperation between China and Sri Lanka is independently chosen by the 2 countries and meets common interests. It does not target any third parties. Citing the concept of security concerns is senseless to pressure Sri Lanka. China urges relevant parties to see China's scientific explorations in a reasonable and sensible way and stop disturbing normal exchange and cooperation between China and Sri Lanka. Next question, please.
谢谢发言人。总台央视记者提问，这个问题呢依然是与美日澳有关的。我们也注意到呢，澳大利亚
Also question about the US, Japan, and Australia. We have noted that after the trilateral meeting, they issued a joint statement on the cross-strait situation and Taiwan question. I wonder how does China view Australia's acts under the current China-Australia relations. Just now, I have made China's position clear over the trilateral statement. In disregard of basic facts, Australian side unwarrantedly accuses China of what it has done to oppose sovereignty and territorial integrity, which is legitimate and lawful. This goes against the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, blatantly interferes in China's internal affairs, and undermines regional peace and stability. China firmly rejects that. In recent years, China-Australia relations faced severe difficulties. The responsibility lies with the Australian side, and the ins and outs are very clear. China's position of developing China-Australia relations is clear and persistent. A sound and steady development of the relations meets the fundamental interests and shared aspiration of the 2 peoples. We urge the Australian side to have a clear understanding of the situation, to right from wrong, and respect the core interests and major concerns of China, abide by the One China principle and basic norms in international relations, stop interfering in China's internal affairs, and stop its erroneous behaviors in undermining regional peace and stability, and not to create new obstacles to China-Australia relations. Last week, your colleague shared the situation of the visit to Xinjiang by Islamic countries' envoy to China. Can you further elaborate on the visit? From August the 1st to the 5th, diplomatic envoys to China from Islamic countries visited Xinjiang upon invitation. Ambassadors and diplomats from 30 Islamic countries, including Algeria and other countries, visited Xinjiang. During the visit, the delegation visited Kashgar, Aksu, and Urumqi, visited mosques, Xinjiang Islamic institutes, grassroots communities, cotton plantations, and former education centers. And they spent time in the Uyghur families and had communication with the religious figures. They saw with their own eyes the harmony between people of all ethnic backgrounds and the full protection of people's freedom of religious belief and the breakthroughs of our efforts in poverty reduction and rural revitalization. They spoke highly of China's strategies to put people first and appreciate the huge efforts and outcomes in economic development and the unity there. They said that the fruits in Xinjiang are sweet and the people's lives here are just as sweet as the fruits. And the people here live in harmony, freedom, and the tranquility. The people here are very happy and with a great sense of security about their living environment. They expect that they can share in more opportunities of Belt and Road cooperation and have more cooperation in infrastructure, modern agriculture, and education and science and technology cooperation. Seeing is believing. We have heard similar positive comments about Xinjiang by foreign delegations after their visit to Xinjiang. People in Xinjiang can tell that if their human rights and the freedom of religious beliefs are protected in Xinjiang, and the international community can see with their own eyes. Since December 2018, more than 2,000 people from all walks of life from more than 100 countries and regions have visited Xinjiang. They have seen harmony, prosperity, and the tranquility in Xinjiang. In the Human Rights Council, nearly 100 countries supported China's just position and opposed interference in China's interference under the pretext of human rights. I want to stress that a handful of Western politicians would rather choose to believe in the lies made up by certain individuals instead of listening to the shared voice of more than 25 million Xinjiang population. They would rather to cooperate with the clumsy act put up by anti-China forces rather than face up to the fact that Xinjiang is witnessing development and progress. We urge these politicians to listen to the just voice in the international community and stop playing the Xinjiang card to destabilize Xinjiang and contain China.
Question from Reuters. What's the agenda for the South Korean foreign minister's visit in China? Will he be meeting with Chinese officials face to face? And what does China hope to get out of the visit? Thanks.
路透社提问，想请问一个韩国外长访华的问题。他的议程里面会不会和中国的官员进行面对面的会谈呢？以及中国希望从此次访问中，看到什么成果？
Last week, my colleague has already released a statement that the ROK Foreign Minister will visit China upon invitation, and during their meeting, State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi will have meeting with his counterpart, and China will put out a release in a timely basis. Please stay tuned. Kyoto News. Has the military drill concluded that is scheduled to end on the 7th? I would refer you to the readout put out by the Chinese military. Next question, please.
The ASEAN comments at the top, please. I just wanted to clarify, did the ASEAN group, did they support China's position on Taiwan? Taiwan actions, I should say, recent Taiwan actions. I'm asking because Antony Blinken is also citing ASEAN as supporting the US position. I wonder if you could clarify a little bit about the ASEAN response specifically on recent Taiwan actions by China. Thank you.
我想再请问一下，东盟国家是否支持中国近日在台海采取的行动呢？我想请您澄清的原因是，我们也看到美方布林肯国务卿也引用了 东盟方面的表态，表示东盟方面对美国的立场是支持的，所以还是想请您在这个问题上进一步说明一下。
我愿意很乐意给你介绍一下相关的情况。
I would like to share some information with you. The ASEAN foreign ministers released a statement on the cross-strait situation, reaffirming their commitment to the One China principle. The Lao foreign minister also released a statement saying that Taiwan is an indispensable part of China. It condemns the action by the U.S. side and supports the Chinese government in achieving the unification. Cambodian Foreign Minister Prak Sokhonn also said that the U.S. actions goes against its own commitment and escalates tensions. This reflects the U.S. hegemonic practice and supports China in defending its own interests and make strong response to the U.S. actions. A Singaporean foreign minister, when meeting with his counterpart Wang Yi, said that the Singaporean side opposes the One China principle and opposes any unilateral action to change the status quo. The special envoy of Malaysia also said in a statement that he hopes that the Western countries will not take double standards in treating the Taiwan question and the Ukraine issue, as the countries are condemning what is happening in Ukraine while interfering in other countries' internal affairs in the Taiwan question. I think facts speak for itself. In addition to the ASEAN countries, more than 170 countries have spoken in various ways for their support for China when it comes to the Taiwan question. This is a landslide in comparison to the few support Western countries have gained. Next question, please. According to reports, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on countries with nuclear weapons to commit to the no first-use policy and stressed that it is totally unacceptable to admit the possibility of a nuclear war while attending the Peace Memorial Ceremony on August 6 in Hiroshima, Japan. This is the first time a UN Secretary General has made this call. What is China's comment? We applaud Secretary General Antonio Guterres' call for relevant parties to commit to the no first use of nuclear weapons. From the very day China successfully tested a nuclear weapon, it has been an advocate for the comprehensive prohibition and complete elimination of nuclear weapons. We are committed to the no first use of nuclear weapons at any time, and under any circumstances, and pledge unconditionally not to use or threaten to use nuclear weapons against non-nuclear weapon states or nuclear weapon-free zones. China is the only one of the 5 nuclear weapon states to have made these pledges. We call on other nuclear weapon states to adopt the same policy so as to jointly safeguard global strategic stability and effectively reduce the risk of a nuclear war. Next question, please.
Thank you. A question from Reuters. The Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines said today in Taipei that Chinese military drills won't prevent him from visiting friends. He also said, as in his own hemisphere, his people don't like it when any powerful neighbor seeks to intimidate or bully them. What's China's comment? Thank you.
圣文森特的总理今天表示说，中国的这个军事演习不会阻止他们向台北向他们这个友好的朋友继续交往。然后他们说本国的人民并不希望看到强大的国家对其他国家弱小的国家进行 欺侮还有恫吓，你对此有何评论？
我刚才已经
Just now, I have said that China's military actions is open, transparent, and professional. It is in line with domestic law, international law, and customary practices in the world. It is aimed at warning the Taiwan independence forces and punish the Taiwan independence forces. The majority of countries in the world have expressed their support. In response to the specific question you asked, I would like to say that there's only one China in the world, and Taiwan is an inalienable part of the Chinese territory. Nothing can change this fact. Staying committed to the One China principle is the popular support of the world and the trend of the times. We believe that relevant countries will recognize this trend and make a decision that suits the historical momentum. Next question, please. Beijing Youth Daily, a question about the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. On the 77th anniversary, Japanese PM said in the remarks that no matter how narrow, steep, or difficult the path to a world without nuclear weapons may be, Japan will endeavor to connect the reality with all measures. What is China's comment? I have noted relevant reports. The history of atomic bombing has to be reviewed in the historical context. The Japanese side is talking about the bombing without any deep reflection about the history of aggression. I wonder how the international community, including the US, see this. Japan was the only country that had suffered a nuclear strike. It has always styled itself as a model student in international nuclear disarmament and nuclear non-proliferation, and claims to build a world without nuclear weapons. In fact, however, Japan has been enjoying the US nuclear umbrella, and it has been opposing and thwarting the US relinquishing of its policy of first use of nuclear weapons. Some politicians even claim to have a nuclear sharing with the US side, claiming that the US deployment of nuclear weapons should not be a taboo. The Japanese government not only connived at such discussions and even deleted the 3 no-nuclear principles in the report submitted to the 10th Review Conference of the NPT. What is the Japanese real intention, and is its actions matched with words? We urge the Japanese side as a non-nuclear weapon state party to the NPT, earnestly fulfill its international obligations, earnestly abide by its 3 no-nuclear principles, not develop or introduce nuclear weapons, and take real actions to contribute to a world free from nuclear weapons. Next question, please. Beijing Daily. Recently, the armed conflict between Israel and a Palestinian armed group has claimed great casualties. On the 7th, the two sides have reached a ceasefire under Egypt's mediation. What is China's comment? The conflict between Israel and Palestine has claimed many civilian casualties, including children. It is indeed very heart-rending. China firmly opposes and condemns all violence targeting civilians. China welcomes the ceasefire under Egypt's mediation and appreciates the efforts of the Egyptian side. The situation is still vulnerable and fragile. We urge relevant parties, especially the Israeli side, to exercise restraint, comply with relevant UN resolutions, avoid reigniting the tension, and maintain stability of the Palestine-Israel situation. The underlying reason for the recurrent conflicts between Israel and Palestine is the absence of the implementation of the two-state solution and long denial of the Palestinian people's legitimate appeal of establishing an independent state. China calls for a larger-scale, more authoritative, and more influential international peace conference, and seek a lasting and just solution to the question of Palestine. Based on the two-state solution, China will continue to firmly support the Palestinians in restoring their legitimate rights and make relentless efforts for that. Next question, please.
On Friday, there was an announcement whereby China listed many different areas where communication between it and the US would either be curtailed or stopped completely. I wonder if you could tell us about what areas will continue to be open for discussion, or where lines of communication will remain open between China and the US. Thank you.
上周五，中方宣布了一些将和美国停止或减少沟通的领域。我想请问一下，有哪些方面的沟通渠道依然会保持开放呢？会在哪些方面继续保持沟通？
对话沟通需要诚意，中方
Dialogue and communication requires sincerity. China will continue to make serious démarches with the U.S. side over Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. We urge the U.S. side to earnestly reflect on and redress its mistakes and stop its connivance and support for Taiwan independent separatist forces. Stop playing the Taiwan card to contain China with the question and stop confounding right and wrong and deflecting the blame, escalate the situation, or expand the crisis. It needs to take real actions to abide by the One China principle and the three joint communiques. The paper. Recently, Armenian and Azerbaijani military had many crossfires at the line of contact in Nagorno-Karabakh, claiming deaths and casualties. What is China's comment? We have noted relevant reports. Azerbaijan and Armenia are both friendly cooperative partners of China. We hope both sides can comply with the consensus of ceasefire, avoid further escalation of the situation, and redress conflicts and differences through political dialogues. Next question, please.
Thank you. According to Myanmar state media, the Myanmar ambassador to China recently passed away. Could you confirm that China is aware of this, and is China aware of how he passed away? Thank you.
近日有缅甸官媒报道，缅甸驻华大使不幸逝世，你能否证实中方对此是否知情？以及大使是如何去世的？
你提到的消息属实。
I can confirm what you mentioned. Since the ambassador, His Excellency, assumed office in 2019, he dedicated to the development of China-Myanmar relations. We express our deep mourning and regret over his sudden passing, and our deep condolences and sympathies to his family. China is in close communication with the Myanmar side over the ambassador's passing and will do all we can to provide convenience for the follow-up issues.
A White House spokesperson said China's activities in and around Taiwan Strait are a significant escalation to change the status quo, and they are provocative and irresponsible. What's your comment? The U.S. mischaracterization of these events does not cover up one obvious fact. It is the U.S. that is seeking to change the status quo in the Taiwan Strait and causing the situation to escalate. It is also the U.S. that has made irresponsible actions. Since 4 months ago, China has time and again made clear to the U.S. through multiple channels and various levels our firm opposition to Pelosi's visit. We have been stressing that such a visit would seriously violate the One China principle and the 3 Sino-U.S. joint communiques and constitute a major escalation of U.S. provocations. We have also made clear that Chinese side would not sit idly by in the event of such a visit, and U.S. side must not harbor any illusion and all consequences arising therefrom shall be borne by the U.S. China has tried every means and done everything possible to warn about the consequences. However, the U.S. has chosen to pursue the wrong course in disregard of China's dissuasion and warning. Just as State Councilor Wang pointed out, what has happened is single-handedly orchestrated and provoked by the U.S., and the context, cause, and course of the events are crystal clear. China has taken legitimate countermeasures only after the U.S. made the provocation, and our countermeasures are aimed to uphold China's sovereignty and security and consistent with international law and domestic law. The U.S. has been going down a wrong path which deviates from the One China principle, and yet it accuses China of escalating. This is gangster logic. China's resolute countermeasures against Pelosi's visit is not only a necessary step to uphold its sovereignty and territorial integrity, but also a legitimate move to safeguard the basic norms governing international relations and the international order established after World War II. The One China principle has been recognized by UN and the overwhelming majority of countries, and it has become a widely accepted basic norm in international relations and an important part of the post-World War II world order. To uphold the One China principle and reject attempts to fudge and hollow out the One China policy is to uphold the principle of non-interference and the principle in international law of respecting other countries' sovereignty and territorial integrity. For quite some time, in the name of democracy and human rights, U.S. has wantonly interfered in the internal affairs of developing countries and launched military interventions and aggressions. The behavior poses the biggest threat to regional and international security. By firmly opposing U.S. provocations on the Taiwan question, we are saying no to the U.S. bullying and high-handedness, protecting cross-strait peace and regional stability, and upholding international fairness and justice. China's legitimate measures have won widespread support from the international community, and over 170 countries have voiced their strong support for China to uphold sovereignty and One China principle. They overwhelmingly outnumber the U.S. and its few supporters. If the U.S. continues to act wantonly and arbitrarily on the Taiwan question, neither the Chinese people nor people elsewhere in the world will say yes to this. Next question, please.
Thank you. The former CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, wrote on his Twitter on August the 7th, linked to a CNN report about COVID-19 in Beijing. He wrote, "End the CCP," which was a widely shared tweet. I just wondered if the Chinese Foreign Ministry had a comment on this. Thank you.
推特公司的一个联合创始人杰克多尔西周末的时候在推特上针对 CNN 一篇报道中国严格应对新冠的措施说道让共产党结束吧，灭亡吧。这个推文受到了广泛的转发，外交部对这个推文有何评论？
你是从什么媒体了解到这个情况的呢？
Where did you get that message? Where do you see the report?
Which is openly available to.
我是在推特上面看到的。我相信所有推特用户，包括您在内，都可以看到这条消息。If you saw that message from Twitter, I think this caused no reason for surprise. Because I think any serious media outlet will not report on such a eye-catching or clout-chasing message. The CPC enjoys support from the Chinese people, and any remarks that smears the party will gain no support, but only reveal desperation. Next question, please. Any more questions? That would conclude today's press conference. Thank you.